This country was quite run down at the time, quite dry. Tried a few of probably the older style methods. We ripped country and seeded it and so on, and it failed. And then we ran into a run of dry years that just compounded it. Then we sort of sat down as a family and said, well, we've got to do something different. And that started us on a journey, which was probably 14 years ago, I suppose. I'm Philip Hughes, and we farm on the Western Downs, southern Queensland. And we've got about 5,200 hectares here in 2 properties. We also have our wholesale beef brand in Brisbane that Alister manages and runs. Trying to understand how the system functions and trying to replicate some of that stuff back into our land. Adele and Anna were big drivers down this road, very, very organic in your thinking. You and Locke did that MLA program, the MLA Challenge, didn't you?
Yeah. Actually played a massive role in the business side of the business and also the production side of the business.
That was probably the biggest change when we introduced measuring into our system. Like most of our industry is really rainfall based, and we're always hanging out for rain, and it's an external factor that's somewhere that we don't have any control over, so you can hang a lot of stuff on that. I remember Locke and I looked at that and said, well, we used to say that if we didn't get 30 mils of rain in a fall, well, we might as well not have it in an event. We might as well not have it. And then if you go back through your rainfall charts, you'll find that there's probably only 4 or 5 events of 30 mils and over in a really, really good year. And in a bad year, there might only be 1. And that was the real catalyst, wasn't it? That was a real catalyst to say, well, hell, we can't operate on 1 decent rain change. So then we had to come back and say, well, look, we've got to be able to operate this country with 10 to 15 mils of rain. And that was before we learnt about the small water cycle and critical importance of that.
We place so much significance and weight on grass and how much grass we have and how much cover there is. And I think it's probably a progression of our thinking that we're going, okay, so what's underneath that grass is the soil. And so the soil needs to be a functioning system of its own. And how do we help it become a functioning system of its own? And then that in itself helps support the grass. And then we get the cover, and then we can get our production, targets that we're aiming for.
We had to look at introducing rest into our country, and I think that's critical. That's looking at it from the grazing perspective, from the enterprise perspective. We've done a lot of training in rotational grazing and that type of thing, cycling our minerals, cycling our nutrients in our water and so on. That's a critical part of our grazing operation.
We've done baseline soil testing, and we also do seasonal grass sampling testing to see energy contents, and then we can provide the cattle with the balance of what they're not getting in the grass itself. A lot of what we've done is also on the animal health itself. So when we purchase cattle, they go through a particular induction program as such, and a lot of that has a focus on gut health of the animal before they're put out into the paddock. In terms of stock management tools digitally, we use AgriWeb, which is a whole property tool that enables us to trace an animal back its entire process on the entire property from the point it gets here to when it leaves. In combination with that, we use as an overlay of AgriWeb is SIBO Labs, which is a satellite imaging program that determines how much dry matter you've got in your paddocks.
It allows you to make business decisions based on actual data rather than a gut feel, and it takes away the potential of having 50 years of experience making a decision versus 10 years experience being able to make pretty much the exact same decision. Having actual data to make actual decisions is imperative.
We're doing a lot of work trying to work out what is the minimum amount of grass cover you need to maintain, to get the maximum result from your small water cycles. There's some data around it saying that you should probably only take 30% out and trample 30 and then leave 30 standing in the paddock. It's something like that is where you want to get to eventually. From a grazing perspective, you have to have discipline around leaving whatever that number is, whether it's 30% or 40%. We sort of think it's somewhere around that sort of 1,000 to 1,200 kilograms a hectare is what we're working on now to keep our land resilient. The thing that we're dealing with, and you hear about in climate change, is variability. Well, we live with variability. We've lived with it all our life. You're looking out here now, you'll run a beast to the acre here at the moment. But this is right at the top of the cycle. You've got to understand that within the next few years we'll be back down at the bottom of the cycle where we probably only run a beast to 20 acres. So you've got to try and pulse that out and balance that out. It's first of all cover. You have to have cover on your land, because the only way you'll get your filtration and get your microbial activity and cover you and keep your land cool is cover. That's where we get into strife when we run out of feed, and then you're starting from a really low base again. If you introduce rest into your system for a start, that's the first thing you need to do, which is pretty simple. It's just removing set stocking out of your system. That's number one. Then you can start building from there. When we hit the bottom of the cycle and we get 1 in 10 at the back end, and we believe we're pretty resilient to that. It's not a static thing. We range here from sort of 200, 250 mils right through to 1,000. And you don't know if next year's going to be 1,000 or next year's going to be 250. And that's the dilemma that all Australians have that are working the land. We're way, way better than where we were because we understand where we're coming from. And we understand the drivers of our system and understand there are a lot of things that are going on under the soil that a lot of people, even our scientists don't understand yet. But that's where we need to be working. That's where we put all our horsepower. And that's when we're seeing results. We're seeing real results, but there's a lot more upside yet.